This is the presentation on ecology and the environment. Please make sure you're taking notes in your binder for each of the fill in the blanks. They're going to be underlined in the presentation. You may pause it so you can fill things in so you don't lose your place. Let's start with ecology. Ecology is the study of how organisms interact with one another and with their environment or their surroundings. So it's how animals and plants interact with other animals and plants and with the place that they live in. There are two main factors when we're studying ecology: biotic factors and abiotic factors. Biotic factors are living things, hence the word bio in that prefix. The living things, or the organisms, are the biotic factors. Examples are animals, plants, and even unicellular organisms. The single-celled organisms we studied in our other unit, they're a part of the ecology in a place. Abiotic factors, on the other hand, are the non-living things. These examples are water, soil, rainfall, and temperature. They can also include the amount of sunlight, the different rocks and minerals that are in the soil and in the ground. All of those are the non-living things that play a part in an environment. The levels in the environment. Now, we did levels of an organism when we did cells, and cells make up tissues, and tissues make up organs, that make up organ systems, which make up an organism. But those levels don't stop there. In the levels in the environment, we actually are going to pick up where we left off with organism. So an organism or species is the smallest level here. And then we add on to get population. Our next level becomes community. Even further, we get to ecosystem. And then our final level here becomes the biome. The rest of our notes are going to go through what each of these things means and kind of some examples of the different levels. So let's start with organism or species. An organism is a living thing that performs all life functions. Now that's a definition you already know. A species is organisms that are closely related and can produce offspring that can then produce more offspring. So a species is a group of organisms that are able to reproduce and have babies. Those babies then can reproduce and have more babies. A species, if they are reproducing with members of a different species, they're often not going to be able to create offspring that can then reproduce themselves. I always get the question about a liger, lion, and a tiger. They can produce a baby that we often call a liger, but that liger itself cannot have babies. So a liger isn't really a great example of a species. Here, the example is an alligator. An alligator is an organism from the American alligator species. And there are different kinds of alligator species around, but the American alligators are going to reproduce with other American alligators. Next, we have population. Population is a group of organisms from the same species that live together in the same living space. So these organisms are living in the same area, so they're often competing for shelter, for food, and for water with the other organisms. So the example of many alligators living together is a population of alligators, and they're going to fight with each other about where they're able to make their homes, lay their eggs. They're going to fight over food sources. And a group of organisms from the same species that live together constitutes a population. And you can have populations of alligators in different places, but when they're all in one little area, that's called a population. Next, we have community. Community is all the different populations that share the same living space. So not just talking about the alligators now, but all the different animals and all the different plants that are in the same area. And they're also going to compete for shelter. Like 2 different bird species in the same area are going to compete for trees to be able to build their nests in. There are organisms that are going to fight over the same food source or the same little pond for drinking water. An example of a community is alligators, cranes, and grasses. That's what you want to write down. And they're living together in the same area. Now, cranes and alligators make sense, but people often forget about plants, so I added the grasses in there so you remember that plants are also part of a community. They are living things as well. An ecosystem is all of the communities that share the same living space and the abiotic factors, the non-living things in the environment. So now we're not just talking about the plants and animals in an area, but the non-living things, the water, the amount of sunlight that we get, the temperature. The example is an ecosystem of alligators and cranes and grasses, that community, that's all living in the same muddy freshwater pond ecosystem. So an ecosystem encompasses all the living things and the non-living things together in the same space. Last, we have the biome. A biome is made up of many ecosystems that share similar climate and communities. So if I have 3 or 4 different ecosystems that are kind of similar, they have the same kinds of plants and animals, a similar temperature, similar amount of rainfall, they can fall under the same biome. So the example here is a freshwater biome, which is made up of many smaller ecosystems, such as different ponds, or lakes, or rivers, or streams. And since those different ecosystems share similar types of animals and plants, or similar abiotic factors, they fall under the same umbrella of the biome, freshwater biome. Now here's where things get a little confusing because it's not always easy to remember the difference between a biome and an ecosystem. Biomes are different from ecosystems because biomes contain many ecosystems. Biomes are made up of ecosystems. And all of the ecosystems within a biome are going to share a lot of the same features. So they're going to have a similar temperature. Maybe it's really cold or really hot. Or maybe they have seasonal temperature patterns, hot in summer, cold in winter. They're going to have a similar amount of rainfall, maybe very little or a whole lot. They're going to have soil and rock and mineral types that are very similar to each other. And then the biotic factors, the plants and animals, are going to be very similar as well. An example of this is the tropical rainforest biome. Within that biome, there are a few different ecosystems, such as the Amazon rainforest, the African rainforest, and the Australian rainforest. The plants and animals and the amount of rainfall and type of soil that's in these rainforests in South America and Africa and Australia are all very similar. So because they have similar traits in these different locations, these 3 ecosystems fall under the same type of biome of tropical rainforest. Now, as always, if you have any questions, let me know.